The wind shifted. It was subtle at first, a faint whistle through the tall pines lining the edge of the ridge, but something in it sent a ripple of unease down my spine. I paused on the dirt path, squinting up at the sky, where clouds were beginning to knit themselves together into a thick, dark blanket. The air, a moment ago dry and crisp, now carried a damp chill that clung to the skin. I'd only meant to hike out to the overlook, maybe spend a quiet hour in the clearing with my notebook and a thermos of coffee. This part of the trail wasn't frequented much, a remnant of the old ranger system, with the occasional mile marker still rusting in place, forgotten by anyone but people like me who liked silence more than scenery. But now, standing alone amid the whispering trees, I realized I misread the day entirely. A low rumble threaded through the hills. Not thunder exactly, but something heavier, like the distant cracking of earth. I turned slowly, instinct drawing my eyes toward the valley. What I saw then tightened my chest. A wall of black cloud was rolling over the treetops, swallowing sunlight as it moved. It wasn't just a storm. It was a monster, alive and growing, its tendrils already dropping rain that shimmered like smoke in the distance. I'd seen storms like this before on the news, tearing through towns like a god's angry breath. You didn't wait those out. You hid from them. I broke into a jog. My boots pounded the trail, slipping on damp leaves as the wind began to push harder, louder. I knew there was an old shelter nearby, maybe a mile west of where I stood. I hadn't planned to go that far today, but the thought of being caught out in the open erased hesitation. I ducked beneath low branches, the first drops of rain spitting against my jacket like pebbles. Branches snapped overhead. The storm was faster than I'd guessed. By the time the shelter came into view, a squat concrete structure half swallowed by moss and vines. I was soaked to bone, heart pounding in rhythm with the thunder now crashing directly overhead. The steel door groaned as I shoved it open. It hadn't been used in years. Clearly, the air inside was damp, heavy with the scent of rust and mildew. Still, it was dry. I stepped in, pulling the door closed behind me, leaving the scream of the wind outside. My breath came in heaves, loud in the dim space. The interior was basic. A few cots with moth-eaten blankets, a metal locker, and a cracked mirror hanging crooked on the back wall. I shrugged off my wet jacket, letting it drop with a slap onto the floor. The silence inside was total, unnatural almost, like the world had paused. And then it was broken. A bang, not thunder. This was close. Too close. I spun around just as the door slammed open. She burst like a gust of the storm itself. Soaked, eyes wide, arms wrapped tightly around herself. Her clothes clung to her like a second skin, hair matted against her forehead. For a split second, she didn't see me. Her focus was on the door, which she shoved shut with a grunt, locking the tempest outside again. Then she turned and froze. The recognition was instant. It hit her like lightning. Face slackening, body stiffening, a tremor racing through her hands as they dropped slowly from the handle. Her eyes met mine. Timed and slow, it collapsed. I knew her, not just a vague familiarity, not a once-past stranger. I knew her, the shape of her face, the scar beneath her left brow, the way she stood, like she was ready to flee at any moment. Years might have passed, but she hadn't vanished from my memory. No, she'd been anchored there, stubborn as a wound that never quite healed. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Neither of us moved. I felt my heartbeat in my throat. This wasn't just surprise. It was something deeper, raw, the kind of meeting that isn't supposed to happen by accident, the kind that carries weight, history, the sharp edge of unresolved things. What? She finally managed, voice cracking. What are you doing here? My voice felt like gravel in my mouth. I could ask you the same. She took a half step back, her gaze scanning the room as if to confirm this wasn't some fever dream. I thought this shelter was abandoned. It is, I said, except, apparently, when it's not. Lightning flashed outside, briefly illuminating the lines of her face, the storm streaking across the windowless wall. I could see it in her eyes, the calculation, the weighing of options. She looked like she was considering running back into the storm rather than staying inside with me. You remember, she said after a moment. Quieter now. You remember who I am. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. I didn't think I'd ever see you again, she continued, voice almost swallowed by the thunder. The silence stretched. My throat was dry and not from the run. There are a lot of things I didn't think would happen again, I said. Something flickered in her expression. Regret, maybe, or defensiveness. The air inside the shelter was heavy now, thicker than the storm outside. Every word we spoke felt like peeling back old skin, exposing something neither of us had meant to reveal. She walked past me slowly, keeping a few feet of space between us, her eyes never leaving mine until she reached one of the old cots and sat down with a sigh. Water dripped from her sleeves to the concrete floor. She leaned forward, rubbing her arms, trying to warm herself. I thought about offering her my jacket, but stopped myself. We weren't there yet. The storm screamed against the shelter, rattling the door like it wanted in. But inside, a different kind of pressure was building, one that didn't rattle walls, but still demanded strength to withstand. I leaned against the opposite wall, eyes on her, heart refusing to settle. Of all the shelters, of all the places she could have ended up tonight, it was here, with me. That wasn't just weather. That was something else. And I wasn't sure if it was fate or punishment. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The wind howled beyond the shelter, like the storm was circling, waiting. Inside, the silence between us had a gravity of its own, pulling at memory, thickening the air. She sat hunched forward, fingers clasped between her knees, eyes locked on the floor like it held the answers she couldn't ask me for. I didn't think I'd ever see you again, she said, voice raw. She'd already said it once, but now it wasn't surprise. It was something quieter, sadder. She didn't look up when she spoke. She didn't have to. Her words cut through the stale air, through time, through me. I didn't expect to, I replied. I hadn't thought about her in years, not in any deliberate way. But now, faced with her again, the past returned not as memory but as presence. A weight. The air in the room seemed colder. She raised her head slowly. Her eyes were the same, a fierce, searching blue, still restless, still sharp. Her voice was steadier this time. So what are you doing out here? Trying to stay alive, I said with a faint, bitter laugh. Same as you. The corner of her mouth twitched, though I couldn't tell if it was amusement or disgust. She leaned back against the cot's frame. Metal creaked under her. I didn't know you'd move back, she said. I haven't. A pause. Then she nodded, understanding without asking why I was here, alone and unannounced. She didn't push, and I didn't explain. Not yet. The rain slammed harder against the roof, like fists pounding in rage. She flinched. I saw it, and I remembered she hated storms. She always had. How long do you think it'll last? She asked, her voice quieter now, almost buried under the roar of wind. Hours, I said. Maybe longer. Another pause. She looked at the ground again, then up at me. I meant the storm inside. The word stopped me. I looked at her then, really looked. She wasn't just tired from running. She was exhausted from carrying something she hadn't been able to set down for years. And now, here we were, face to face with it, trapped by weather and fate. I guess that depends, I said carefully, on whether we're still pretending it never happened. She closed her eyes, exhaled. I don't pretend. Not anymore. You always were better at forgetting. Her eyes snapped open. I didn't forget, she said, voice sharp. I couldn't if I tried. Then why did you leave? I asked. Back then, after everything, you just disappeared. Because I had to. She stood suddenly, crossing the room in a few short steps. Her movements were tense, her hands clenched. You don't know what it was like after. I was there, I said. No, you weren't. She turned on me, fury breaking through. You were there for the part that mattered to you. You were there when it suited your guilt, your pride. But when things got real, when it got ugly, you pulled away. I stayed as long as I could. I said, trying to keep my voice level. You shut me out. Because you couldn't look at me without seeing what we lost. Her voice cracked at the end, her breath catching. I couldn't breathe with you around. Every time you spoke, it was like hearing an echo of the life we didn't get to have. I stood still, letting the words hit. They were barbed, but they weren't wrong. We had lost something. Both of us. A friend. A future. Maybe even ourselves. I blamed you, she said, softer now, eyes distant. For a long time, it was easier. I needed someone to hold it all for me. And you were the one who stayed just long enough to be easy to hate. I swallowed hard. You think I didn't blame myself? I don't know what you did, she said. I only know I hurt. And you weren't there to see it. I couldn't fix it. You know that. No, she agreed. But you could have stayed. Lightning lit the room like a flashbulb. In the burst of light, I saw her face. Tired, wet, red-rimmed eyes that had seen too much grief for someone her age. We stood in that tension, years of silence finally cracking. She took a breath, then reached into her coat pocket, pulling something small out, a folded photo. She stared at it before handing it to me. I hesitated, then took it. It was old, worn around the edges. The three of us, me, her, and Daniel, back when the world still made sense. Back when we were more than friends. We were a family of our own making. He stood between us in the picture, arm around each of our shoulders, grinning with that same unshakable confidence. I hadn't seen that photo in years. You still carry this? I never stopped, she said. I looked up. You still miss him. Every day. So do I. Silence again, but not hostile this time. Just heavy. I never blamed you for what happened, she said quietly. Not really. I blamed myself enough for both of us. She nodded slowly, then sat again, curling into herself slightly, like the weight of that confession had cost her something. I sat across from her, the photo resting between us on the floor. We were just kids, she said. None of us knew what we were doing. But we were all we had, I replied. She looked at me with something softer now. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the possibility of it. The storm outside was still violent, but in here, something had shifted. I should have come back, I admitted. I should have tried harder. I should have let you. It wasn't a resolution, but it was something close. She looked around the shelter, her gaze settling on the cracked mirror, hanging crookedly on the wall. You think this place is still strong enough to hold? Maybe, I said. Depends on the storm. She let out a breath that might have been a laugh, might have been a sigh. Then I guess we find out together. The wind howled again, but it felt farther away this time. Not gone, but distant. She leaned back. I'm not running anymore. And for the first time in years, I believed her. The storm's fury throbbed like a living heartbeat against the concrete walls. But inside, a quieter storm was still unwinding between us. She had stopped shivering, though her clothes were still soaked, clinging like ivy. I watched her as she stared at the photo lying between us on the cold floor. Our past crystallized in one faded image. She finally broke the silence. Do you ever think it would have turned out differently if we hadn't gone that night? The question lingered in the air, delicate as glass. I think about that every damn day, I said. She nodded, not surprised. Her eyes didn't leave the photo. I used to replay in my head, 1 minute later, one word different. Like I could change the outcome if I thought hard enough. But we can't rewrite it, I said. We just carry it. She looked up then, meeting my eyes with something raw and unguarded. I wasn't ready for it. Any of it. I thought I could handle the weight, but I was just drowning. We all were, I said. You just swam farther to escape it. Her lips twitched at that. I didn't escape. I just got better at pretending. There was no anger left in her voice. Just exhaustion, the kind that lives in the marrow. I shifted slightly on the floor, brushing the wet sleeve of my jacket away from my arm. You know, I never forgave myself for what happened. You weren't driving, she said. No, but I insisted we go. I convinced him it was a good idea. He wanted to go. You just gave him the excuse. That doesn't make it better, I said. You were both drinking. I should have. We all made decisions that night, she interrupted gently. None of them good. We sat with that, the truth of it, The way grief fractures blame and turns every piece inward. You still talk to his mom? I asked, unsure if I should have brought it up. She nodded. Sometimes. Holidays mostly. She never asked me to explain. I think she didn't want to know the full story. Maybe she already did, I said. She always said Daniel was a fire in the dark. She told me once that fires burn out fast because they're too much of the world to hold. That sounds like her. She smiled faintly. She said I was a match and you were the flint. I blinked. What? She said you both made me burn brighter. I didn't know what to say to that. She glanced at me, searching my face for something. You ever find your way back to music? I shook my head. Not really. I tried once, a few years ago. The guitar felt too heavy. You used to play every day. I used to believe the world was worth singing to. She didn't push back on that. Instead, she shifted her posture, drawing her knees up and wrapping her arms around them. Her voice dropped. I started writing again. My eyebrows lifted. You did. Just in journals. Nothing big. Not like before. But it helps. You were good. So were you. We shared a thin, rueful smile. A memory passed between us. Open mic nights, cramped basements, warm harmonies that masked unraveling hearts. Then she asked, "Why did you come here? This shelter?" I hesitated. The truth was vulnerable. But so were we. Now, I guess I was hoping to forget for a while. I said, be somewhere no one remembered me. And instead you ran into the one person who remembered everything. Yeah, I said, chuckling under my breath. Funny how the universe works. Cruel, more like, but maybe necessary. Her head tilted. You think this is fate? No, but I think it's a chance. To do what? To say what we never said. To stop running. To stop hiding behind what we lost. She looked down at her hands, flexing her fingers slowly, as if considering their place in the world. I thought I hated you, she admitted, for years. But it wasn't hate. It was grief with nowhere to go. I know, I said. I felt it too. I wanted you to hurt, she continued. And when I heard you left town, I figured you did. I left because I couldn't take the reminders. Every place felt like a wound. I know, she whispered. Me too. Lightning flashed again. This time we both stayed still. I still see him, I said after a pause. Sometimes in dreams. Sometimes when I hear a laugh on the street that sounds like his. For a second, I turn around. She nodded, tears beginning to shine in her eyes. In those moments, I continued, I feel like I failed him. Failed you. She inhaled shakily, swiping at her cheek. You didn't. We all just fell apart. I reached for the photo, lifting it carefully. Then maybe it's time we figure out how to put some of the pieces back. Her eyes softened. You think that's possible? I don't know, I said, but I think we owe it to him to try. She didn't answer immediately. She stood slowly and walked to a small window slit near the door, peering into the dark. The wind had quieted slightly. The rain still came, but it no longer felt like wrath. It was just weather now. Something passing. We lost the best part of us that night, she said. But maybe not all of it. I joined her by the wall. Our reflections were faint in the fog glass. Older versions of the people we used to be. She glanced at me. If we walk out of here tomorrow, what then? I don't know, I admitted, but maybe we start with a coffee and a conversation that doesn't end in silence. A faint smile tugged at her lips. I could do that. We stood side by side, quiet but not alone. Outside, the storm finally began to break. Morning bled slowly into the sky, bruised and pale, like the aftermath of a long, violent cry. The storm had finally exhausted itself, leaving behind a quiet so complete it felt sacred. Outside, the wind was reduced to a whisper rustling through the pine trees, and the rain had thinned to a drizzle. The world, once drowned in fury, now exhaled. Inside the shelter, we moved with the delicate precision of people waking from something heavy. She stretched first, rubbing her neck where she slept slumped against the wall, then glanced toward me with bleary eyes. "You snore," she muttered. "I do not." She gave me a lopsided smirk. "You did last night." I blinked, then chuckled. Must have been the peace and quiet. She smiled. It was the kind that reached her eyes, however faintly. Something about the lightness of that moment, however fleeting, felt earned. We had survived something, not just a storm but each other. The weight between us had changed shape. Not gone, but shifted. Less barbed, more shared. "You think it's safe to leave?" she asked. I looked at the door. Damp light seeped in through the cracks. Safe enough. We packed in silence. There wasn't much to gather. Wet jackets, a half-empty thermos, memories stitched back into skin. As she pulled her hood over her head, she hesitated. "Before we go," she said, "can I ask something?" "Of course. When you found this place, did you come here because you knew I would?" The question caught me off guard. For a moment, I wasn't sure how to answer. I hadn't thought of it in that way. But the question lingered in a space I hadn't allowed myself to examine. "No," I said, "not intentionally." She raised an eyebrow. "But maybe some part of me hoped." I admitted. She seemed to weigh that. Then she nodded. "Same." We opened the door together. The world was wet, gleaming in the pale light. Trees dripped with rainwater, leaves heavy and dark. The air smelled of earth and ash and something clean, like new beginnings, or at least a chance for one. We stepped out. Our boots squelched into the mud, and the cold was immediate but not biting. She zipped her coat to her chin and followed me down the overgrown trail that wound through the forest. The silence between us was no longer the tense quiet of old wounds, but something more tentative, hopeful, maybe. "You know," she said after a while, "I was scared you'd hate me. Or worse, pity me." "I don't feel either," I said. "Just regret. For what we lost. For not fighting harder to keep what mattered." She nodded. "It's strange. After all these years, I thought I'd buried it deep enough that it couldn't surface. But being with you, it's like time folded in on itself. Pain has a long memory," I said, "but so does love." She looked at me sideways, considering. "Do you think that's what it was?" "Love. I know it was." We stopped at a clearing where the trees thinned and the sun finally broke through, a timid gold spreading across slick moss and broken branches. She looked up, blinking at the light. "I was so angry at the world for taking him," she said. "But the truth is, I was angry that we couldn't save each other. You're not the only one who carries that." She took a breath, long and full, then turned to face me completely. "So what now? We get coffee? Start over?" "I don't know if we can start over, but maybe we can start from here." She reached into her coat and pulled out the photo again, the same one she'd shown me in the shelter. It was damp around the edges now, curling with age and moisture, but the image remained intact. The three of us, smiling unbroken. She tore the bottom of it, clean and slow, then handed me half. I stared at the piece in my hand. Myself and Daniel, arms linked, eyes shining with a future we couldn't see coming. "Why split it?" I asked. "Because it's time to stop carrying the whole thing alone," she said. "He belonged to both of us." I nodded, tucking the fragment carefully into my jacket pocket. We walked again. The forest felt different now, less menacing, more like something returned to itself. Like us, maybe, as the shelter disappeared behind us. So did some of the burden. Not all, not even most, but enough. At the edge of the woods, we saw the road again. Damp asphalt glistened like black glass. Her car was there, half covered in pine needles and leaves. Mine wasn't far down the shoulder. She stopped and looked at me. "You going back?" "For now, but I'm not disappearing again." She smiled softly. "Good, because I don't think I could lose you twice." "You won't." She opened her car door, paused, then looked back. "I'll text you. I'll answer." It wasn't a dramatic goodbye. No declarations. Just two people who had survived the storm and found, in its wake, a fragile bridge between who they were and who they might still become. As I walked to my car, I turned back once. She was still there, watching. Then she waved, small, almost shy, and got in. I watched her car pull onto the road and disappear into the mist. For the first time in years, I didn't feel lost. I felt unfinished, and that somehow felt like hope.